Welcome to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Years ago, it was stereotypical to think that all commercial pilots were male and all flight attendants were female. Slowly through the years, though, the roles have changed as we're seeing more female pilots navigating the skies. In January 2024, statistics released by the Institute for Women of Aviation Worldwide stated in 2023 that a total of 12% of new pilot licenses issued in Canada went to women. So to find out about the experiences of a female pilot, I'm joined by Grace Bastien, a first officer at Porter Airlines. Grace, welcome to Empowered.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I am so excited to have you here today. One of the major reasons why is because it was requested. A young female pilot asked me to go out and find a female pilot just so that younger women would be able to see what you do. So let me begin. When did you know that you wanted to be a pilot?
So for me, I was always around aviation when I was growing up. My father's a pilot, and I was always flying with him and around the airport, around airplanes. So it was an idea in the back of my head, but it wasn't until I was in high school that I realized that it could be a career, and I never looked back from there.
Okay, so you realized it could be a career. How did you get into flying?
So right after high school, I went into a college program to get my education and my pilot licenses. And then I was qualified to go out and get my first job in the industry.
And what does that mean? What is the first job in the industry?
For me, it was a role as a flight instructor. So I was teaching in the same program that I went to immediately after high school. It can look different for other people. You can go fly medevac operations up in Northern Ontario. You can do aerial photography, but flight instructing was what I was really drawn to.
Interesting. See, I didn't realize that this is the beginning. So what was your career progression then? So you started you were a flight instructor, and then how did you progress?
Yeah, I did that for about 5 years to gain enough experience to be qualified to go to the airlines in Canada. And I went to Porter as my first airline position, and I was hired as a first officer, and I've been doing that for the last 2 years.
So what type of planes do you fly?
I fly an Embraer 195 E2. It's a new jet made by Embraer. Porter's actually the first company in Canada to operate this aircraft, and I'm flying to destinations across Canada and the US.
So what was it like teaching young people how to fly?
At the beginning of my career, at first, I was worried that I didn't have enough experience to do the job justice, but I found that I was really passionate for teaching, and it was really a rewarding experience to see your young students succeed, especially because I had just been in that position as a student a few years prior.
You know, it's really interesting that you said you didn't think that you were qualified. As women, we do that to ourselves often, right? That imposter syndrome pops in, and we all think, well, I don't think I'm good enough. I don't think I'm strong enough. I don't think I'm qualified enough. What got you to the next level?
I had a really good experience going through my training, becoming qualified to be a flight instructor. I worked with 2 really awesome pilots who trained me and taught me what it meant to be a good teacher. And that gave me the confidence I needed to do a really good job.
That's amazing. That's amazing that you had people that mentored you, helped you out, because a lot of industries don't do that. So did it worry you at any point that you were pursuing a male-dominated industry? And it's not the first male-dominated industry out there anyway.
For me, it wasn't really on my mind when I chose this career path, and I credit that to my parents, actually. I was raised to believe that I can do anything I want to, regardless of what the societal norms may be. So when I went to them and said, you know, Mom and Dad, I want to be a pilot, gender was never really part of the conversation, and I didn't really notice that I was outnumbered until I met these other women, and they were going, you know, we have a job to do. We have to encourage more women to get into the industry. And I found that really inspiring. And I went, oh, yeah, you're kind of right. There aren't enough of us here, so we have work to do.
I think we all have work to do, regardless of what industry we're in right now. So when we come back, we will continue talking about female pilots and talking about encouraging them. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. In today's episode, we're discussing the experience of a female pilot. So, Grace, what do you like about being a pilot?
What I love most is that every single day I go to work, it's a new experience. And even if I'm flying to a familiar destination, I'm flying with new people, I'm flying in new conditions. The views are always changing, and I really do enjoy a nice sunset over the clouds flying west in the evening. And I think there's something special about every day being different. You know, I don't feel like I'm going to a desk every day answering the same emails like a lot of people that I know in the corporate world do. So my office is moving around with me wherever I go, which is really, really neat. And I also feel like as a female pilot, I have this almost unwritten role where I have the opportunity to go out there and inspire the next generation of female pilots. So I really love to do that. So anytime I have the chance to connect with someone or inspire someone, I'll always take that opportunity. And I think that comes with the role as a female pilot.
And I think that's really important. I love the fact that a lot of women that I know that are in roles of inspiration and mentorship actually like giving back and actually think it's a priority in order to continue on with their job and their life. Because I always say we need to make sure that the next generation is bigger and better than us, right? So we need to help them understand all that intellectual property that we have, that we've gathered along the years. But I want to ask you about your challenges. There must be challenges. So what are some challenging aspects of being a pilot?
Definitely the road to get to where I am today is long and challenging. It takes a lot of dedication, a lot of time commitment, even financial commitment for your training. It can be quite costly. But at the end of the day, it is all worth it, because I feel like I'm at a point now in my career where I've made it. I'm flying up there high in the flight levels in a plane that goes really fast. So it feels really, really rewarding. I know another thing that can often deter people from this position is the scheduling. Airline pilots are often away from home, often working over holidays. And that did intimidate me at first when I did join the airlines. However, I've come to realize that it's really just about your mindset and thinking about being part of something bigger. This past Christmas, I was working. I wasn't at home with my family, and luckily they were supportive and we just celebrated on a different day. But because I was out there, I was part of connecting other families over the holidays, and I left that experience feeling a lot more fulfilled than I thought I would. I thought I was going to be sad, but I was actually really happy to be out there. So it's not as scary as you think.
But I love the fact that you looked at the big picture, and it wasn't all about you. It was about connecting people, and it was everybody else that was involved, and not poor you, which is amazing. It's an amazing and incredible mindset to be in, which a lot more of us need to be in as well.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to gain some perspective on that, and I left looking forward to working next Christmas.
You could always celebrate on the 26th or 27th.
It's all about being with family and having a nice time, and it's just a day on the calendar.
So what is one of the most memorable experiences that you'd like to share with us as well? Because I'm sure that there are quite a few of them.
Anytime I get to bring a young person into the flight deck before or after a flight, that is when I make the best memories. Seeing a little kid's face just light up when they see all the buttons, all the switches, and that we have colorful screens and they have questions. Their parents want to get photos. That's always my favorite part of being at work. And this past fall, I actually had the opportunity to fly a whole team of rhythmic gymnasts back home to Halifax after a competition. So I had a group of maybe 15 girls between the age of 10 and 13 lined up, ready to come into the flight deck with a question to ask me and their phone in hand to take a selfie. And they were all so excited to learn about what my job was. And I think I may have even convinced a couple of them to pursue this as a career. So
Amazing.
that was really awesome.
Amazing. So don't go away. We'll be right back with more of Grace Bastien's flight experiences, and hopefully she'll inspire you as well. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Today's episode, we're discussing the experiences of a female pilot. So Grace, what are the most frequent questions that people ask you when they see that you're the one flying the plane?
From kids, they ask me, how do you know where all the buttons are? And the short answer for that is, I studied really hard and that's how I know where they are. But from adults, they often ask me if I'm actually flying the plane. And I think that comes from the perspective of captain versus a first officer. I'm a first officer, which means I'm second in command to the captain. And a lot of people don't realize that both of us fly the plane. We take turns. We switch back and forth between what we call pilot flying or pilot monitoring. So pilot flying is doing all of the actual hard work of flying the aircraft, while the monitoring pilot is managing things like air traffic control and the systems of the aircraft and keeping an eye on what the pilot flying is doing. So yes, I do actually do takeoffs and landings, and I do them pretty well.
Good for you. That is inspirational on its own.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk about inspiration. Who inspires you?
I feel most inspired by the female pilots who came before me. These are the women that entered the industry when it wasn't as welcoming as when I entered the industry. And if they could get through the hard days when no one was really rooting for them, I can definitely get through the hard days with all of the support that I feel on a daily basis.
Yeah, those women. I think Air Canada had the first female pilot. I don't know if it was 30 years ago.
Yep.
I don't even know what the number is, but I think she just retired.
Judy Cameron, yes.
And she paved the way for everyone else. And like, what a trailblazer.
I know. I'm inspired by her every day. I've had the honor of meeting her in person a couple of times, having a conversation, and she truly is an inspirational woman. And many of my female colleagues feel the same way. We see her as our hero.
That's great. That's such a nice thing to hear, because we all need somebody that can help us get to that next level, or somebody to inspire us and get us thinking about doing something that's out of the ordinary.
Exactly. And the goal is that one day this won't be out of the ordinary. That's why we're doing things like this, to try and get more young girls and young women interested, and not even just interested, but confident enough to act on their interests. Because there are tons of young women out there who, yeah, they look up at the sky and think, maybe I could do that one day. But the societal norms that we have now convince them, even subconsciously, that maybe it's not for them.
So you said the word confidence. And I feel that there are a lot of young women right now that struggle with confidence.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked to a lot of university women, young women, and the question that came up most often was, how do you make a decision? There's that whole confidence factor. What would you say to somebody that's struggling with their confidence, just to help them get to that next level where they think, okay, this will get me on the proper trail to become confident?
For me, when I was younger, I lacked confidence like many other young girls out there.
We all did.
Yeah. But I found that practicing, studying, working hard, preparing myself more than I really needed to helped build my confidence. So I knew I would perform well, and then I'd remind myself, okay, I just did really well on this exam, or I just won this soccer tournament. I did that myself. And over time, you train yourself to believe in your confidence. It's always there. You just have to believe it.
And that's just it. So what happens when you have a group of ladies that don't believe it?
Well,
I know it's a tough question.
that is a really tough question. And I think find someone to look up to. Find someone that figured it out and follow in their footsteps. So find your Judy Cameron, find someone to look up to in whatever field you're working in, and it'll come together.
Those are great words of wisdom. And when we come back, we are going to talk about the resources that are available for up and coming female pilots. And Grace is going to talk about as well what advice she has for young women. So please don't go away. We will be right back with more of Grace Bastien and what it's like to be a female pilot. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. To find out about the experience as a female pilot, I'm joined by Grace Bastien, and she's a first officer at Porter Airlines. So Grace, before we went to break, we were talking about inspiration and stuff. But I want to talk about if somebody wants to become a pilot, what resources are out there for them?
So these days, there are a lot of really great resources, and ones that specifically focus on encouraging young women and girls to get into the industry. To name a few, we have the Northern Lights Aero Foundation. They're an organization that hosts different networking events. They have different scholarship opportunities and resources to give you more information about the different paths you can take within the aviation industry. The 99s is a long-standing group for women in aviation, and they host fly-ins, and they love to get together and have a really great time. So if there's ever an event in your area, I strongly encourage you to go out and meet some of the women in the industry and learn more about what opportunities are out there.
Amazing. Now, what advice do you have for a young woman who's starting her career as a pilot or hasn't even started yet?
Yeah. The most important thing to do before you start flight training is to make sure that it's the right fit for you. And I mean small aircraft. You're going to spend a lot of time in a small training aircraft. So you want to make sure that you're comfortable in that environment. And the way to do that is to find your local flight school or flying club, call them up, and book yourself in for an introductory lesson. You'll get to go up with a flight instructor and be at the controls of an airplane for roughly an hour. And it's a good opportunity to see if you enjoy what it feels like to be up in the sky. So I really recommend that people go out and have that first experience before they decide to commit to a program right out of high school, for example.
It's really interesting that you said, are they going to be comfortable in a small enclosed area?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think you think about that. Your pilot quarters are very small.
Yes. It's often very tight. It's not like a car on the highway. You're a lot closer together with the person sitting next to you. A lot of the training aircraft don't have air conditioning, so it can get a little warm in the summer. So it's definitely hard work, but you need to put in that work in order to be able to work safely in the industry one day. So it all makes sense.
And it's rewarding as well.
Absolutely.
It's rewarding for you. So one of the questions that came up was, what about work-life balance? I know you talked about Christmas and your schedule is really not your schedule. But what happens to a lot of the female pilots when it comes to work-life balance?
That is brought up a lot, and it's been a concern of mine for years, thinking about starting a family one day. And every opportunity I have to ask a female pilot who also happens to be a mother, I go, okay, how do you do it? And the answer is usually pretty simple. You just make it work. You adapt. You figure out what works for your family and your circumstances, and drop the kids off at grandma and grandpa's house and carry on.
So old school.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Basically, we go back to the old school way.
Yeah.
Now, what about a lot of people have trouble with stress, and a lot of people, other people work in very high stress situations, and I'm sure your situation can be extremely stressful at times, depending on the weather or a specific landing or whatever. What do you do to help you when you're in a stressful situation?
As a pilot, we're trained extensively on how to manage ourselves in stressful situations. So we view stress a little bit differently. You immediately just fall back onto your procedures and your training, and you almost kick into robot mode. You get the job done. You're very step by step about your approach to dealing with a stressful situation, and that really takes away like the shock factor of it.
Well, thank you so much, Grace. This was amazing. And what a great way to open this career to a whole group of women that have never even thought about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is your reminder that it's okay to have huge aspirations and think big. Never say never, and always put yourself out there to try new things, even if they seem impossible. Grace's words of wisdom to me were, you never know where your curiosity will take you. Mine took me to the sky. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski, and I'm here to empower you and make frugality fashionable. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.